And a pleasant Sunday to you alongside Rick Lee, track handicapper and morning line maker. I'm Jim Byers. Let's take a look at a 10-race Sunday card. We're off the turf today. Unfortunately, Rick, we couldn't quite slide through yesterday's card without the rain impacting the final couple of races. We're off turf. We're sloppy. Have quite a few scratches we'll pass along, but listen to us for the scratches and watch the crawl and present some different wagering opportunities. So let's jump on to the first. There's no high five on the first race. It's a mile now on the main track, switched off the turf. Scratch the 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 12. I really like King Congo in here. Originally 6-1 on the line on turf. I still liked him when the race came off the turf, but he's out. So now I'm left with Running the Red. Who are you left with?
Yeah, I'm on Running the Red, who I thought would be value on turf. I really thought they might dismiss this one, thinking it wasn't as good on turf. But anyway, he comes off a really nice second-place finish, and that was a really strong second-place finish, beating 3/4 of a length. It was almost 12 lengths back to the third-place finisher. The track was rated muddy that day. The track, I assume, will be in that good to muddy range when we start today's first race. And I like the fact that in 3 off-track races, it's produced his 2 best buyer figures. So from the rail, Running the Red. The 11 horse, Cowboy Ridge, is my second pick. This is a type, if you're in the selection business, you don't want to scratch into as your top pick. 0 for 27. However, he's always showed an ability to be a horse that could break his maiden. He's hit the board 9 times. He's finished second at Houston in a sprint just a couple starts back. Last time out, finished third in the mud going today's distance of 1 mile. That race was an off-the-turf race, but it was against open rivals. This is against state bred, so Cowboy Ridge, once again, deserves a look. And then I went with the 7 horse. It's my third selection, Shanghai Gold, who showed good sprinter speed last time out and finished 4th. That was a solid performance there. I think he might be able to get to the front in this field, and, speed on an off-track, it's always got to be respected.
Yeah. And we certainly saw that in the last race last night, which was going to be a turfer, moved off, and we saw Sasha Reisenhover for trainer Terry Oaf go wire-to-wire with Glass Eater. And so we saw that on an off-track yesterday. I'm on Running the Red as well. My second pick is actually the Asmussen here, Vic's Lincoln Lawyer. This horse just ran a really well-beaten 5th behind Running the Red and some others on May 1st here, but has worked since at LAD. I just have a feeling maybe he'll revert to some earlier performances. When he wasn't with Steve claimed this horse on his own behalf for $7,500 March 4th at Houston. I'm always interested when Steve claims a bottom-level runner for himself. He obviously thinks he can win races. Why else would he be claiming a bottom-level runner? Don't really like this guy's form, but I took him second over Cowboy Ridge. Cowboy Ridge has done the bulk of his best work on the turf, but it looks like he can main track if need be.
Yeah, I think he can finish second on any surface. I
think so.
That's who he is.
Poly, Tapeta, whatever. The old Equitrack at Remington, he probably could have run second or third.
Yep, for sure.
On to the second race. Scratch the 6 Malibu Prince. The second race, 6.5 furlongs for maiden claimers.
Yeah, and a good race. The 5 Synthetic Joe is my top selection here. Finished second at Golden Gate. He was consistently good at Golden Gate. Came to Lone Star after a very long layoff. Raced here May 1st, 5/8 of a mile race in the mud, and was forwardly placed, finishing second. Earned the field's fastest buyer figure, running a 62. You've got to assume he needed the race. Frank Lucarelli's having just a really good season here at Lone Star Park. And the fact that he was competitive going 2 turns tells me the stretch out from 5 to 6.5 might actually work in his advantage. The 3 horse Funny Actor is my next selection. Finished second on an off-track at Oaklawn, just 2 starts back sprinting. That race there, to me, kind of tags him as a major player here. The final start in Hot Springs was maiden 40, and he led for 5/8 of a mile, then faded late. Now back sprinting. He's had a good recent workout here, and these Arkansas breds have surprised me. They're running really well here.
Huh?
Yeah, we did. We had another one. We've had a couple this week. So Arkansas breds are because the breeding is getting better, because the purse is so outrageously high, they're starting to run well.
Yeah.
And then let's go to the 2 BWP Special, who raced well at Fairgrounds in his last start, beaten less than a length, actually lost a late lead in that start. Hasn't raced since that race in March, had a couple works in Iowa, shipped down here. I really wasn't sure if he'd be running in Iowa or here, so the fact that he's in is certainly good. Inside speed, and again, having raced at Fairgrounds, that makes him a logical threat.
Yeah. Yeah, I went with Synthetic Joe as well. We'll see if he can be an off-track Joe here today. I like the second off the layoff angle and the fact that he came back firing pretty well on Kentucky Derby Day. I went with Tiz Truculent as a second pick. I mean, this guy was crying out for a drop down into a tag, I think. I think he had kind of run the gamut of maiden special weight opportunities. And I don't know if Tiz Truculent's going to really dig the off track. I mean, maybe it won't be so off by the time he gets on it. But his last race on a sealed track here, opening weekend, wasn't very good. But I give him a nod for second. BWP Special is obviously one that merits. And I gave Funny Actor the fourth look here for some reason. I wasn't respecting the Arkansas breds enough when I sat down to handicap this, I guess.
Yeah, you pay the price when you disrespect an Arky bred.
True.
I mean, that could be your downfall today.
On to the third. Take out both halves of the entry here. Just completely wipe out Texas Crossbow and Vehement. And in this one, still a really interesting race. Non-winners of 2 Life at 6 furlongs. I came really close to picking Descent here, but decided to go to 50 Shades of Purple because I thought he ran a pretty nice race last time, even though he absolutely refused to load for a while.
Yeah, he was his own worst enemy on that day. He, like you said, took forever. Then he broke last, was forwardly placed, into the turn and finished second. That was a really nice race there after, again, a slow start. His previous races at Houston were good performances sprinting. He won on a wet track by 7 lengths, breaking his maiden, then went into a non-winners of 2 for 15, same condition as this in his very next start. Lost a clear lead, finishing third. So, proven wet track ability and really good form. I mean, I think he's the logical horse to beat in here.
Let me jump in real quick. We just found out that the 5 Descent is out. I mean, this is really, really late breaking information, but the 5 Descent coming back off that year-long layoff is a scratch.
Okay. Yeah, that was going to be interesting because Ronnie Cravens is 42% off the claim, but I don't know if any of those 42% are after 1 year.
Yeah, claim and a 1 year layoff is a unique angle.
It's a unique angle. So, anyway.
We don't have to worry about it, that one-time $300,000 yearling today.
Yeah, so now we're kind of on the fly for third and fourth picks. But anyway, the 4, the Rubber Band Man, was going to be my third pick. Now it looks like he's my second pick. Not a ton of things to like other than the fact that at Will Rogers Downs last year, he caught his only one of his races, one of 2 on a wet track. He actually whistled that day, winning by 5 lengths. And today's start is his third start after a pretty long layoff. So I thought maybe third start after a break, the fact he likes a wet track. I'm pretty much got him as my second pick.
Yeah. I wound up with Euro East as my second pick. He's coming back really fast after a really bad effort on May 15th. But the race before that wasn't too bad, and that was on a sealed track, and he's not too far removed from a lengthy layoff. I wanted to pick Rubber Band Man only because, I love the 70s music, and Rubber Band Man by the Spinners is a tremendous old song. Somehow that wasn't enough to get him into my picks, but this field is down to a few enough horses that pretty much anybody could potentially be a contender in here. But I really like 50 Shades of Purple now that Descent scratched because I thought he was the only one that might be able to warm him up.
Yeah, he's going to get a real easy lead now, 50 Shades of Purple, unless he doesn't break alertly. But so, yeah, 4-horse field, or is it 3? Either way.
I think we're down to 4 now.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Let's not worry about that. Okay, on to the 4th. 1 mile, scratch the plain one here. Honoring Major. I really like both halves of the entry. I might have leaned a little bit more toward Honoring Major initially, but I like Thomas Shelby as well. But right now we're dealing with just the 1A remaining in the race.
Yeah, and usually outfits like Diodoro, they're really tough to beat when they scratch one of 2. Thomas Shelby, I slightly lean towards him off that really good Oaklawn form. He won back-to-back races in Hot Springs, both by widening margins. Ramon Vasquez was aboard in his last start, May 1st in Hot Springs, and again, won by 4 widening lengths. So he's a win machine, this 5-year-old son of Curlin. So if he holds his 2-turn form, he'll be tough to beat. It was interesting, his last 2 races on Springs were such emphatic wins, and they came after a bunch of sprint races. So obviously he prefers the 2 turns. Excuse me. The 4 Good Scout is my next pick, who finished second last time out at Lone Star Park at a slightly higher condition than this one. He was favored that day for Caldwell. Good early speed, so he could be trouble on the lead, even though it looks like there's plenty of speed for such a short field. And then I went with the 5, Bear Oak, who's crossed the wire first 4 consecutive races. His last start was an entry-level allowance win. Now going into a starter allowance, the buyer figures have been on a steady ascension, so he's also an interesting horse for a trainer that I've really grown to respect, the work of Kevin Scholl, who's been a really high percentage trainer with a very small stable. So, Bear Oak, to me, this horse has found a way to win, and sometimes when horses get on a roll, they run fast enough to win, and Bear Oak's certainly on a roll.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'm with Thomas Shelby as well. I'm looking at River Echo as my second pick here. Normally, I don't like picking horses fresh off that 1 3/4 race at Oaklawn Park, especially since this guy finished up about a 16th of a mile behind the winner. But, that race is so unusual, and Broberg does have a history of putting horses in there, and then they run up. I mean, sometimes they run up the track nonetheless. But nonetheless, I think if you look back at races at a more reasonable distance, he's been competitive. I like the fact he's had to work since that grueling 1 3/4. I'm really skeptical of horses coming off that 1 3/4 that don't work. But I gave him a look for second because I think there was originally quite a bit of speed in here.
Yeah.
And I thought River Echo might get a trip. I went with Good Scout and Bear Oak in behind him, but there's still some interesting. Also, I didn't mention that Shakes Creek, the 3, is also scratched out of this 4th race.
Yeah, one of those wins by Bear Oak was from off the pace on a wet track. So
yeah,
all of these horses here, it seem like they want to run near the lead, but they're also pretty nice horses, and they've been able to win without the lead.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, on to the 5th. We're off the turf there. Now, today's 5th is the start of the 6-shooter. Since we have the 10-race card today, the 6-shooter is races 5 through 10, like the old original Pick 6 at Caliente. The 5-10, they called that. That was the original jackpot Pick 6. $152,570 is the carryover in the 6-shooter. Scratch the 5 Super Brady out of this off the turfer.
Yeah, you can make a case for several now. We're off the turf. Best you ever seen is still my top selection. Won 3 consecutive races in Hot Springs, all from off the pace. I guess if I have any concern at all, it's just to turn back to 5 furlongs. But, again, he's in terrific form for Broberg, so I'm going to take him. The 7 is now my second selection. Get a load of this, who has won 2 of his last he won 2 races in Houston, 2 of his last 3 down south there. 1 at 5 furlongs, 1 at 5 1/2. He's got terrific early speed. His most recent race at this condition was was not a real good performance. He was 3-2. They went fast, and he just cratered pretty badly on that day. But again, the cutback, I think 5/8 is his distance, and J.R. Caldwell's having a tremendous season. He does have the fastest pace figure, so my thought is if he can get clear like he did in a couple of those wins in Houston, then he might be really tough to catch. And the 6, Mr. Production, another Carl Broberg trainee in here who was second at a similar condition at Delta at 5/8 of a mile. If you go down, since he was in Louisiana most of this winter, he was a clear second-level allowance winner, Louisiana breds at Delta also. So really likes these abbreviated sprint distances. He's not as quick as Get a Load of This, but he might end up working out just a dream trip.
Yeah, the Broberg stable has been cool here this week, but it's going to heat up eventually, and this may be the race where it heats up. I picked against Best You Ever Seen. I didn't like him all that much when the race was on the turf, but I like him more that it's back on the main track. But I took Get a Load of This. I've been waiting for this horse to run. He's been entered and scratched a couple times, and both times he took a ton of speed out of the sprint races that he came out of. But they're leaving him in apparently today. I mean, that last race is kind of a, it's a little bit of a concern. But, he's come back and worked pretty well since then. And I think he may just be able to go out and blitz them from the get-go. We'll see. Best you ever seen, obviously, if he runs back to those Hot Springs races. If he has time to get up at 5/8, he's going to be extremely salty here. And I took Mr. Production as a third pick as well. On to the 6th. We have a new scratch just in. Well, this actually, I did know about this, but I hadn't marked it on my program. The 7 Out of Mine is out of the 6th race. This is a $5,000 claimer at 5.5 furlongs.
Yeah, and I struggled with, the 4 and the 1 I like best in here. It's a tough call to make. You take horse with speed over the horse you think has a little more class. I went with Asmussen's horse, Westfest, who's had trouble in his last start. His previous races were really good on the Beyer figure scale. He's a 5-time winner. Just dropping down to 5,000. He's never raced close to this class level before. So I'm going to trust they're dropping to win this race. And Steve owns the horse, so he didn't have to, explain to anybody why he's dropping down to a nickel. So he will be, eligible for the starter 5s too if he keeps this horse. And so I'm taking Westfest on the class drop. Boston Repo, second in consecutive races for Carl Broberg. So he's obviously in really good form. He won 3 straight races last summer. So generally speaking, when he gets in good form, he stays there. He has much better early speed than Westfest. And I think the beaten favorite here on April 24th might make amends. And then I went with the 3-horse Tale of a Storm, who's been on turf in his last 2 races. But he, too, has really good early speed. You can see his record on a fast track, and it may be fast by the 6th race. 6 starts, 3 runner-up finishes in a 3rd. He, too, is very quick.
He is. I looked him up because I handicapped this race with the help of the DRF formulator, and I keep mentioning that and hoping that somebody ends up cutting us a deal so I can do that regularly. But Tale of a Storm, you see those races at Gillespie and races like that, and he's still a really fast individual. I looked him up. He was 3 for 7. He won 3 of his first 7 races and had a couple of seconds mixed in. He was looking like a really promising runner about 4 years ago, and he's still making a living. He's just doing it at a much lower level. But, he had that high early speed when he was younger, too, and was able to hold it a little better. I went with Westfest as well, partially because he did have some traffic on May 1st. I didn't think it was enough traffic or enough trouble for me to warrant doing a video race on that. But I think he'll like the change of scenery. He hasn't been here before. And Boston Repo, I kind of went with Westfest because Boston Repo's last race didn't really hit my eye. I went back and rewatched it. He made the lead, a short lead at the 8th pole where that stretch call is, but he was passing tiring rivals. And then he yielded that lead immediately to Electoral. I mean, he wasn't in front more than 3 jumps and just completely gave way. Now, he was 3 lengths clear of the 3rd place finisher. I didn't like that lack of stick-to-itiveness. But, it's a little shorter race today. Like I said, Broberg's going to heat up eventually. And earlier in the week when I was picking him all over the place, he wasn't winning. And now that I'm picking against him, he's probably going to start winning again because you know that the barn's going to heat back up again.
Yeah.
But I didn't really care for the look of that last race. But we'll see. On to the 7th. This is a 7/8 race, maiden special weight. I looked at this race back and forth and couldn't decide, and so I'm curious to see who you went with there.
Yeah, I like the one, A Real Jewel, who's just been really showing steady improvement. She's only run 3 times, 2 at Fairgrounds, 1 at Oaklawn, all in maiden special weight races. Finished 4th, beating only 2 lengths in the most recent start in Hot Springs. Good workouts showing, at least on paper, at Louisiana Downs. Since then, on a wet track. So I'm going to take her. I think she'll be really close to the lead in this field, especially. The 6-horse Captain Beyond, a second Steve Asmussen trainee in this same race. Both starts in Hot Springs. Finished 7th, second start finishing 5th. Tight early trouble apparently along the rail into that first turn at Oaklawn in its most recent race. To me, the buyer figures are very competitive with the one, A Real Jewel. The concern, of course, is she obviously, when Steve put her in a race around 2 turns right off the get-go, that told me he didn't think she had much speed. So she'll have to come running late. And at 7/8 of a mile, she may have time. The 5, Reliant, is my next selection, who at Turf Paradise was really close, finishing second twice after showing almost no early speed. Got here to Lone Star Park April 30th, caught a sloppy track, and once again runs very well. Finishes up strong, beaten less than 1 length in a maiden special weight race. Improving for Greg Green, who, again, he's winning his races in turf sprints, so maybe Reliant will be doing that next time.
Yeah, I had her third as well. Her last race was a good performance. I'm just thinking that the 2 Hot Springs shippers for Asmussen are going to be a little bit tougher. I went back and forth on this one, consulted pedigrees and everything else. I went with Captain Beyond. I'm not a big fan of horses sprinting that don't look like sprinters, but at 7/8, like you say, I think she can come running. Her dam, Holiday Soiree, has been a very middling producer. She hasn't really produced much of anything. But Holiday Soiree was a really nice mare. She earned $405,000. She was third in a grade 1 race at Churchill, a Humana Distaff, going 7 furlongs. She was kind of a longer range sprinter / miler, 1-turn miler type. I don't know if that means anything. The only thing that concerned me about A Real Jewel is she comes out of some really fast races where she was chasing really fast paces. She really slowed dramatically in the last stages of her last race. Now, granted, she was chasing a really fast pace, and that was probably a really tough field. I'm just not sure how much she's going to love 7/8. That being said, I had a 1 next to her name for a while and then changed it at the last second, just thinking maybe Captain Beyond will pick up the pieces. Then you got Fantastic Riva, who's super fast, but for how long, So, really tough race, I think.
It is interesting, our buyer par's 57. So this is one of those races where I think we'll crush it because
I think so.
we do run into races we talk about a lot. I don't think they're going to reach the buyer par in this one, but this is not the case here.
No, I agree.
And I think the pace for A Real Jewel will be slow enough today where if she doesn't get 7/8 today, I don't think she's going to get 7/8.
Yeah, it's time to try her at 5/8 or 5.5. But good race, and I'm really curious to see how the Asmussens fare. On to the 8th. Mile on the main track now. Scratch the 1 Flat Out and Foxy. Scratch the 2 Quinn Murphy. And, the question here is, Brandon's Babe was originally my pick when it was on the turf, but, she has little to no main track. She's earned $200 in her career on dry, fast tracks, nothing on wet tracks. She's hardly ever had a shot. And she only ran on dirt her first 2 outings, and it's been all turf. So that just seems to hand the race to Good Fight, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. It does on paper. I totally agree with you. Good Fight should be 3 to 5. I'm going to guess 2 starts back on and off track. She wins by nearly 9 lengths and a second level allowance. So that there in itself tells you plenty. Has remained in good form on turf. The last start came back in 6 days, so I think you could also make a case that, that was a little fast for a filly. Usually fillies don't come back in less than 7 days. That's rare. So, anyway, on the class drop, liking a wet track, great form, Good Fight, looks like a heavy favorite. Brandon's Babe, like you said. I guess if the horse just wasn't ready early in his career, maybe that would be the reason to like her. She's as talented as Good Fight on turf. I think we could all agree with that. It just comes down to, will she handle the main track? And again, her first 2 starts for her career were on the main. She didn't run all that well, however. She's a much better filly now than she was then. So that's what you got to pin your hopes on.
Yep.
And then the 6, Frosty Flirt, who does, have good early speed, ran against Good Fight on the main track, finished 4th on that day. Now, do note it was 4th out of 4, so sometimes we think 4th ain't so bad, but 4th out of 4, beating 21 lengths. But the previous race did produce a win. Had to pick something third, Jim, so here it is, Frosty Flirt.
It was her or Whoppy, one or the other.
Yeah.
But, I've got the same picks, same order. You know, what was weird was when this was a turf race, I went back and watched the Good Fight Brandon's Babe race. They ran identical races. I mean, their margins behind the leaders are basically the same. They finished ahead apart. One ran fourth, one ran third. The only difference was Good Fight had kind of more of a rail trip, especially late. And Brandon's Babe was caught very wide the whole way, 4 wide, then 6 wide. Otherwise, they ran identical races. So it's kind of like, who do you like coming back after running identical races? And even their odds were kind of close together. Neither of them was favored. One was 5-2, one was 7-2. But Good Fight, clear edge on dirt, I think, for me. Well, for everybody probably. 9th race. First level allowance here, 6 furlongs. Scratch the 1A back shot.
Yeah, we're going with. I'm going with Gallant Plunger. Just again, really good Oaklawn form. Really makes you tough to beat here at Lone Star Park. Won back-to-back races. Won a $30,000 condition claimer. Came back in a starter allowance. Gallant Plunger, was really sharp. One of those races. Well, both of them were on and off track. One was on a sealed. The other was on just a good track. Then went up to a really strong race against DeRapper and Chip Off the Old Block. Gray Attempt, who was a stake winner earlier in his career. That race has turned out to be a key race, his last start in Hot Springs, where he finished 4th. Now back into an entry-level allowance here at Lone Star Park. If he holds his form, and again, he does like a wet track, should be flying late. The 3 is Breaking the Bank, who I certainly like. Went wire-to-wire at Houston in a maiden special weight, so obviously he's going to go into a one other than, which, he did on turf. It was washed off here on April 30th. Didn't break especially well, but he made up ground going 5 furlongs. Now he gets 6 furlongs, a little sharper break. I could see Breaking the Bank running really well today for Brett Calhoun. And then let's go to the one-horse Bible Man, who was part of an entry. Broberg scratched one. That's usually a good sign for the one he leaves in the race. A really good wet track record for this 4-year-old. Last time out at this exact same condition, finished 2nd, beating only 3/4 of a length. It was another length and a half back to 3rd. You can see at Fairgrounds against Louisiana-bred allowance rivals, he does win on a wet track. So, this horse just likes a wet track as well. It's Broberg, and he certainly should get a good stalk and pounce trip.
I liked him last time. Gallant Plunger, I'm glad you brought up that key race, because with the DRF formulator, I was very easily able to look up Chip Off the Old Block, who was 2nd in that race, came back and won at Indiana, ridden out by a romping margin with an 81 buyer.
Wow.
And then the 3rd place finisher, Gray Attempt, came back and won at Churchill by a head and earned an 86 buyer, and I think that was a turf race.
Okay.
So, I mean, they were putting up pretty legit buyers that blow away the par for this race. These were the 2nd and 3rd place finishers that Gallant Plunger was chasing last time, and he was favored over them, too, at Oaklawn that particular day. I'm wondering now why I didn't single him in my suggested pick 4, but I didn't want to suggest like an $8 ticket. So behind him, I had trouble separating them. I mean, you declined last time. He didn't run much, but now he puts blinkers on and gets back off the turf. I don't have him in the top picks, but I could see him running better. Newscaster seems to hate the slop, but his last race on a muddy surface here wasn't too bad. I mean, he was at least in and among Bible Man and Optimal and Declined. And then you got Breaking the Bank and Electoral, who both have fairly recent wins. So I wouldn't call it a wide open race. I think Gallant Plunger is a justified solid favorite. But
so how many did you use in this race?
I wound up using all of them in there.
Yeah, if you can't single Gallant Plunger, you almost have to.
And I don't really like doing that. I mean, I like taking a stand and narrowing the ticket down, especially on a day with some fields like this where it might not pay a lot, but I wound up using all of them. But 10th race. Bottom level maiden claimer, scratch the 2. It's the Ditz, and scratch the 11 Golded Silver.
Yeah, I'm glad we went with a main track race for the Super High Five fans, because you get your card these big turf races, you end up with a field of 6, So this is a good race. The 4 Mine Redemption, I just realized I've said a lot of us. We sent his top picks today, it looks like. Dropping down for maiden 25. He's been very competitive in his sprint races. You can see beating a neck, finishing a very tough luck 3rd, both sprints at Houston. At Remington, he was beaten ahead. And then last time out, they tried turf in 2 turns, and he led for nearly 6 furlongs before he faded. I think Steve's, finally said, let's just drop to the bottom with this one and break his maiden, because he should be tough to beat at 7/8 of a mile at the very bottom of our maiden claiming classification. But then again, he's had chances, and sometimes these horses don't want to win. So
it's kind of now or never, I think, for her.
I agree. My trainer Kevin Scholl, I mentioned earlier, having just tremendous success with limited starters. At 13, he trains Fearless Factor, and you can make a pretty strong case for her just off the big drop in class. She's been running in maiden special weights, maiden 50s, and running well enough. Her one race in the mud was at a mile. She led for 6 furlongs before finishing third. So to me, that's a solid performance. Just a big drop in class, and maybe post 13. I mean, I like being out there oftentimes, especially at 7/8 of a mile. You really get a long run to the turn, and should be in great position at that point, this filly. And then I have the 9 as my third pick, Fancy Blaze for Calhoun, an Arkansas bred who's at Oaklawn, ran well. Her problem is breaking. She breaks last often, or says early trouble, and usually you get in early trouble because you don't break well. So if Fancy Blaze actually will break with the field, she could run really good, because her buyer figure 43 is above par already, and that's with a poor start.
Yeah.
So Fancy Blaze, I think it all comes down to, will she break better? And sometimes at a different venue. At Oaklawn, breaking, maybe just being here at Lone Star Park, she'll be a little more alert.
Maybe she doesn't like that tighter shoot area at Oaklawn.
Maybe.
The 6 furlong races kind of start in kind of a fenced in. Now, she's going to be fenced in and tight here, because at 7/8 we start way out at the end, too. Plus, she takes blinkers off, and maybe that'll help her get out better. Who knows? But I didn't disrespect the Arkansas bred here. I have her second behind Mine Redemption. One thing I will point out, Seriously Sassy, the runner-up in Fancy Blaze's race at Hot Springs, ran here the other day and ran second, and ran a pretty good second, I think, at a decent price. So that Arkansas bred came here and ran okay. I got her second over Fearless Factor.
It's interesting. My PPs don't have Fancy Blaze blinkers on.
Oh, really?
No.
Blinkers off. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well,
blinkers
it doesn't have
off.
either. Mine has
Okay,
nothing.
Yeah. She's taken the blinkers off. That might have been a later, that was probably, you probably had them before they went final.
Yeah, I
had
did.
the DRFs that are automatically updated when they go
Yeah,
final.
these were the day after entries when I downloaded mine.
Fancy Blaze's blinkers off.
Okay, that's
I was
good
kind
to
of
know.
surprised you didn't mention that, because that's one of your favorite angles.
Yeah, I got a bad set of PPs, as we like to say.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll move it along. Thanks so much for looking in, Rick. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Good luck on the races today, and thanks for joining us.
Ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant Sunday and welcome to Lone Star Park at Grand Prairie. We are off the turf today. All of today's races originally scheduled for the grass will be contested on the main track. First race coming up in 22 minutes. At this time, we ask you to please rise as our bugler, Shane Wigley, performs our national anthem. Shane Wigley